Welcome to School of Rock Bottom with Oliver Mason. I'm an actor, a voiceover artist, and a mental health coach, and it's these careers and passions combined that have given birth to this podcast. Those working in the creative industries are 3 times more likely to have a mental health problem, and those working in performing arts and entertainment are twice as likely to suffer from depression, and up to 15 times more likely to have an anxiety disorder. So as you know, on this show, I interview incredible creatives and inspiring people that have lived through a rock bottom and survived. This is a podcast of hope and how to get out. And I am so delighted today because I have got the captivating Cathy Tyson in the studio.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a nice intro.
I mean, I really do have performing arts royalty with me right here. And I've managed to get a little bio together, but honestly, this doesn't even scrape the surface here. This is a deep injustice, I think, this bio. But just to get to the quick, I'm just going to give the listeners and viewers a quick intro before we dive in. So, Cathy Tyson has worked on a broad range of projects for screen and stage, and that's a bit of an understatement. Her performance as Polly in Help, Channel 4, was recognised last year when she won the BAFTA for supporting actress. Amazing.
Thank you.
Other television work includes Maternal for ITV, The Canterville Ghost, BBC, and Band of Gold, ITV. Upcoming television projects include Chaos for Netflix, Criminal Record for Apple TV+, Death in Paradise for the BBC, and Boiling Point, also for the BBC. Cathy's breakout performance as Simone in Mona Lisa earned her multiple nominations: the Los Angeles Film Critics Association Award for Best Supporting Actress and Golden Globe nomination. I'm so excited I can barely get it out. Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actress and BAFTA nomination for Best Actress. She can be seen playing Maureen in the recent Netflix feature Bank of Dave and will be playing Sam in Luna Carmoon's upcoming debut feature Horde. For stage, Cathy has performed across the UK in a variety of productions. Recent credits include Rockets and Blue Lights for the National Theatre and the Manchester Royal Exchange, My Beautiful Laundrette for the Leicester Curve, and Talking Heads at the Octagon Theatre Vault.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
it's incredible.
Thank you. It brought back memories, actually, some of those, what you said there, of the wonderful writers. I had the pleasure to do their work, Alan Bennett, Thank you, Ollie. That's really nice. And I know what you mentioned your first question was going to be when did I have my first rock bottom?
That's exactly it.
Sorry, I'm doing your job for you here.
To be honest, I'm delighted you can do that. I'd love to have you every week.
Well, I think one of them anyway was when I got divorced, and I was 23. I started divorce proceedings, and I'd gotten married when I was 18 and didn't know who I was, and I just thought this isn't working. And so I don't blame my young husband of the time either. He was a year older than me. And my son was 3 months old. So, excuse me, I was working then, I think, when my son was 3 months. Who knows? I don't think I had postnatal depression when I had the baby, but looking back on it, I may have done. But I just think I possibly would have been hospitalized if it was that way. And my mum was a massive support, and I, thought I suddenly became a single parent and felt, I don't really know how to continue working this way. My mother was a single parent. I felt a massive failure at the marriage ending. I'd always wanted to be married and have a family. I'd been married at 18, got some success at 20. Things were going really well. I'd always wanted a child. And then this happened. So I felt, there was a rock bottom, but it went on for years because of the shame that I felt. And I never sought any therapy over this. I just carried this knot in my chest of failure.
Okay.
And how, being very, very worried about how I would appear to people, and also just being thought of as a single mum, and just basically being too worried about what other people thought, and feeling that I couldn't achieve the basics of life, which was a family life. I'd been divorced young. My mother never lived together very much, so I came from a single parent home as well, and I thought I was going along those lines too. So for years I just carried a stone around my neck of the shame about that, and I didn't speak to anybody about it. I just battled on in work, and kept quiet about it. There were some things I used to help me get through that. My mother as well would help babysit and also look after my child. But there was it was really strange because there was a lot of success. I had a figure that I haven't got now. So many people on the outside, I looked slim, successful, and on the inside. That's why I will never, ever, and I sometimes make a mistake when I see young people or slim people that look rich. You just do not know what is going on in their lives because you ask them, because they look as if they have everything. So I just kind of, I got on well. I mean, I was too proud to go and get help because I was a single parent, and if I asked for help, then I would have thought that I'd be seen as a failure. So I had immense crippling pride. Fortunately, I haven't today. I've still got some of that left. There's vestiges of it. But back then it was, because even before I got married, even before I left Liverpool, I still felt, because as a child from a broken home, I always felt different. Right. Because my father didn't live at home, and I was obsessed with that thing of not being enough. Right. Because he wasn't there, and if he was there, then my life would be different. Right.
And do you think that was a thread that kind of made, when that rock bottom happened with the divorce, kind of made it blow up? Do you think that kind of compounded that? Was there sort of an earlier belief, do you think, that kind of triggered that alive?
Yeah. It was all part of it. And fortunately, since the age of 36, I did seek therapy. So I've sought it. I started to seek help. And, I have a faith now. It's not strong, but for the last 21 years, I've prayed. And I'm really grateful for that. As I say, I'm not, I don't attend church regularly or anything like that, but I've prayed. So I've had a faith and been around people that have had a faith in a higher power. Right. So that has been a tremendous support. Mm-hmm. And also just to get to know my emotions a bit, even today, I had a difficult start to the day because I've been tired, and I, the first thing I had to do today was this. So, and usually when I'm tired and on my own, that is not a great recipe. It's kind of, you need to, just with that, because things can get exacerbated. And when I did go out and have a coffee, I bumped into somebody that I knew. So we ended up having lunch together, and it was lovely to see her. Yeah. And she's a wonderful person and a therapist. I haven't seen her for a while. And And so the day started to get better. But also what I do accept now is that when I'm feeling like that, instead of running from it, you know, I feel physically tired at the moment, it's acceptance.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm feeling like this today. And, you know, there are family pressures as well at the moment. And what's lovely is I have a choice over how I can respond to that, because even today I spoke to a family member and said, well done. In the past, I would have just been consumed with me and this feeling that I was trying to escape, and I can be nice to you when this is over. But today it was like there's a nice balance of, yeah, you know, because it is okay to feel low.
Yeah.
Right. There's some fantastic advertising things that are on now. You know, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Who thought of that? And, you know, that's on our billboards. And
it's almost the polar opposite to what you believed in that period of the rock bottom, because obviously it was a different time.
Yeah, it's not okay to feel the way I do.
I think the words you used were you felt a failure and you didn't seek out therapy. This is what you just said just now. And actually you went on to say, if I had have seeked out therapy, that would have then be seen as a failure. So it was
by me
yes,
and society,
right.
probably.
So it was almost like you sort of checkmated yourself in a way. There was no, it sounded like there was nowhere to turn. And then you realised at 36, I think you said,
yeah,
therapy might be a way.
Yeah,
through.
that, yeah. Yeah, you know, when you're going further and further down, and it's like, you know, I mean, the human beings are very, very resilient. We can put ourselves through an awful lot before we take action. And, you know, that's a problem as well.
Yeah.
Why does it have to get that bad? And you know, before we do something, and it's by a mere miracle that we do change and decide this isn't for me anymore. But, you know, I can remember feeling, you know, meeting a neighbour and being really horrible to a neighbour, and then going home and thinking, I've got to go past that neighbour the next day. Oh God, what have I done? And that was a realisation of there's no escape now, because, you know, there just isn't. And so that was helpful. That kind of backed into the corner kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'm still, you know, I've made an amend to that neighbour years ago, and she was wonderful. And her family. And I'm grateful for that, that they accepted that amend.
Why is it important for you to do that? Because some people, I mean, I know you're a lovely person and that's why you would do that, but some people wouldn't have that kind of fastidiousness around it. It seems to me that that's extra important to you. Because when you described the rock bottom moment and you said you felt a failure, and you said the rock bottom went on a long time, and then you referenced today and you said, oh, it's not great for me sometimes to be on my own with my own thoughts. It seems during that period, I mean, specifically, where did it take you, that feeling of failure, in terms of, I wondered if you could give us an example, because you just gave us one today, in fact. Was it lots of micro moments like that? Because I'm sort of reading between the lines and sort of imagining it manifested itself maybe in rumination, overthinking back then. Would I be right in saying that?
And isolation.
Right.
I think misery, when you're generally feeling, you know, it just is compounded, and, you know, rumination, isolation, breakdowns of relationships, not being able to be in the world, you know, right. Be around people. And one of the great things that's happened to me in my later life is that joy and also ability to be able to be around people, because I'm an only child. I struggled with making friends when I was little. I struggled with loneliness when I was little. And when I was a child as well, I didn't know what to say. I didn't have a voice very much. It was all, I grew up in Dingle in Liverpool, and everybody just seemed to have the gift of the gab or the back chat and stuff. And when I would wake up in the morning, it's like rehearsing what I had to say. What should I say? What can I do? And it was just absolute, that kind of bombardment of fear, actually, utter fear of not knowing what to say. Yeah. And so don't say anything. And then, of course, I'd live with my mother, and she'd get the frustration of all of that. Whereas, I couldn't say it, or if I did, I'd be laughed at. The absolute, feeling of being alone, no brothers and sisters to come to my aid. So there was an awful lot. I'm talking about the difficulties, but there was an awful lot good as well that happened in my childhood. But I didn't talk about what was going on and didn't have the language for that. And my mum was a very busy mother. She was a social worker. She came home at night. I think kids need to be taught how to communicate what they're feeling, or even if they don't say anything, but there's space for them to go, it's okay, I'll be here when something does. It's all right to say something. I don't come from, I was born in 1965, so we were only just really learning how to speak in the 80s, I think, after Kilroy Silk.
Yeah, wow.
When his program started to come out, and there were all these people that came on his programs that started talking about their families and how they felt, and that revolutionized television. You're
right. I hadn't even thought of that as being a sort of a watershed moment.
But before that, there was still, you don't talk about things. Still that seen and not heard. Not that my mother was like that, but that kind of. And if you did admit a difficulty, or it was a failure, and no, my mum didn't say that to me. It was just what I felt, and just feeling that thing about my father not being at home, and us not coming from a 2.2 family. I already felt a lack of a lot. There was something lacking.
Right. And so when that rock bottom moment happened, was it almost like a part of you sort of convinced yourself that here is now the evidence, for want of a better word, that there's a lack of something? It seems like you took it on a very deep level when the divorce happened. You then concluded you were a failure, whereas some people would go through a divorce and maybe not make that assumption. It sounded like that was quite powerful.
It was, and even though I initiated the divorce, that's why when people leave people now, I know as a leaver or as somebody who initiated the breakup, the pain I went through, and the other person probably went through a lot as well. But it wasn't easy, but I've not regretted it. This is another thing, which is great. It was the right decision to make because I've not regretted it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I guess the pain we have to go through is worth it.
I guess that's the school of rock bottom right there, isn't it?
Because it was right for me. I hope I don't have any more rock bottoms, but I've had sadnesses. But I don't, something tells me I won't, because of the tools that I have now and the friends around me and how I talk about how I'm feeling. Yes. I think I won't have one, because I think one of the things that compounds a rock bottom is that people don't talk about it. It's not the actual thing itself. It's the taboo around a breakdown, depression. It's the taboo around the thing, not the thing itself.
Yeah.
that creates the problem.
There's an expression, isn't there? You're as sick as your secrets. If you hold on to it, it just grows. It's like a bacterium.
Yeah.
And even how you were feeling this morning, I got a real sense that you wanted to get that off your chest.
Yeah, I thought I would.
I'm
not ashamed of it, because I just thought I felt a bit of fatigue recently, and I do tend to overbook things, and I'm thinking, how is this gonna, I've got to address this, so I thought I'd take October off.
Yeah.
And that sounds terribly decadent to be able to say that, but I thought, so I made some decisions, because I thought, you need to take life. I have demanded a lot of myself. You need to take life a bit slower, walk a bit slowly. Let's see if we can start things there. I just, so I've been feeling a bit,
a little bit burnt out.
Yeah.
Take some time out.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we come back to that in a sec? Because it's going to link very nicely into what I'm about to talk about. Because I think we're saying during that period of the rock bottom, definitely anxiety. It sounds like some possibly depression as well. You said something interesting, that you just kept working as a coping mechanism, just kept throwing yourself into work.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we do work too. I was a single parent, wasn't I? So you work, and work gave me a lot as well. It gave me a focus. Yeah. But carry on. Sorry, what was your question?
Well, I just wondered if it was, at least in the short term, successful in terms of giving you a distraction from whatever you were feeling when you were in those characters, or maybe in rehearsal, or
self-esteem.
Yeah. Were you able to sort of almost park those feelings to one side when you were working?
Yeah. But as an actor, I guess I have to watch that I'm not doing things for praise. I mean, everybody, human beings like approval and praise.
Yeah.
And I think then it was for self-esteem. I also got offered the jobs, so that was nice. It was a distraction, but yes, you have to earn your living, don't you? I'd spent a bit of time when I wasn't working, and maybe that was 6 months, and you
heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Cathy Tyson was out of work for 6 months.
I've been out of work before. Fortunately, I've worked every year of these.
That's incredible.
Which is, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Yeah. It didn't, because my mother was a worker. It didn't. I grew up with a working mother. It didn't occur to me to not. But I also got a lot of solace. I get a lot of solace from literature, from reading. I'm going to the theatre tonight.
Yeah.
But what I have to watch for now is when I don't like the play, I go into absolute, and I have to go listen, accept what is there, because I've seen a lot of plays. I can get really wound up, and I thought, stop.
I know what you mean. I can do it with films as well.
Can you?
And be over-analytical of stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, so I go with an open heart there and hopefully to learn. It's a new play. So I've been on a journey with that as well, just how to receive the arts, especially, stage work, acting, and just to try and I'm a lot happier now, just to try and be a lot more open to what is there. I saw the George Michael, documentary recently, and I just fell in love with him and Andrew Ridgeley, and it was like
the new Netflix one.
And amazing. I was like, oh, why haven't I seen this before? It's like, isn't this wonderful? This friendship that they had between them was golden.
Yeah.
I feel. But sorry, I'm going off the topic here.
Can I ask you again, just about that period where you weren't working? Was that your longest period, do you think? 6 months?
No,
what was the longest, do you think?
I didn't work when the baby was born. I mean, I was asked to, but I said, no, I want to be a mum. But after that, the 6 months, I mean, I've done, I can't remember what it was like, but there was a period when I did some charity fundraising because I couldn't get any work, and I think it was 2008 or 2007, and I had to walk through the doors of a company. And, you know, I've always supported myself. So, and in a way, I guess that was a rock bottom. I had to go there, but it was wonderful because, I saw how other actors, I saw that I'd been very privileged most of my career. And I saw how other actors have to do a full day's work and then go home and do an audition speech.
Right.
And how people supported one another. And we also, you know, and also I decided to go to university when I was there as well. I thought I can't be doing this. But
something very interesting I read actually about you at university, I think, was that you were offered, I hope I've got this right, Celebrity MasterChef.
Yeah.
Well, while you were at university, and I think you turned it down, right?
Because I wasn't offered it, but they were in the process of getting me to do it, and I said no. I went to two lecturers. One said yes, and then the other said, "Well, why are you here?" And I was worried that it would interrupt my studies because I found studying quite difficult.
But I think that alludes a lot to your character, that kind of grounding that you've got, you know, and I think it really does resonate, you know, when I was researching you in particular. I know we know each other a little bit socially, but, you know, I've really been doing a lot of professional stalking over the weekend. Research,
well, that's your dedication, isn't it?
And it really comes through. I mean, I'll back it up with a quote here from an interview that I found in a paper. I hope you don't mind me quoting. No. Allegedly something you said. You can't always be sure with the newspapers. But another kind of example of this kind of grounded thing. So after, you know, the Mona Lisa, absolutely, you know, the movie blew up, and you got all those amazing nominations, there was a moment where I think you could have quite easily have gone to Hollywood and had a life out there. And here's a quote. You said, "I was just 20 and already skinny. And people were saying I needed to have this and that done. I need to shave some inches off here. I found that odd, especially as even the women were saying it. I just thought, I don't want to have plastic surgery. I'm a feminist. What am I going to have to do to myself if I want to stay here?" I mean, I think for a 20-year-old, with all of that noise around this film and all these amazing nominations, I think a lot of people would have just sort of ran straight into the fire or, you know, into the glitz and glamour, whichever way you want to look at it, without really thinking about any of those things. But it sounds like you had a real kind of strong identity and integrity all along.
Well, my mother, I have to credit my mother the way she brought me up, because I saw a strong woman in a job, in a professional career, and there were some other women around that she knew, her colleagues. There were books in the house. I didn't want to be a sexual object, and she also was. I don't want to make her sound like a spy for Russia, but my mum was quite anti-American at the time in the 70s and 80s. You know, she was a socialist.
Yeah.
She grew up poor in Liverpool. And so I went to America. I don't feel like this about America now, but when I went to America with cautious interest because I'd been brought up on, you know, my mother would have sooner had me go to Russia than America. So I had the Red Army Choir playing on the record player. You know, when I was younger, she'd talk about Russia and stuff, and America was full of capitalists and stuff like that. So I had a, you know, wow, America. I wasn't, and I was aware, it was the 80s, right? So we were aware, this was 1984, of the American invasion. It was something called the American invasion in Britain, where we were starting to realize as a country how much the American invasion was affecting our lives. So we were questioning that at that time. You know, so I had my mother, my upbringing there, as well as what was going on, you know, how we needed to look to our country to see what creatives and what we possessed. And also this thing of, I was aware that as a young woman, how how my body would be commodified.
Right.
In an acting job. I was just aware of it. So, especially being a black woman, because I just thought, I'm not going to be open to you doing anything to my body. So I had the kind of like a history of what happened to black women in centuries ago. And, it was quite heavy stuff, wasn't it? But look, also, there was a downside to that, because there's nothing wrong with going naked on screen, right? Sex is part of our lives, and I don't have to be authoritarian or, so there was that, but also if things are handled well, that's fine too. It's part of life. There's nothing wrong with being sensual on screen.
Yeah.
So I, for a time, was kind of like trying to, protect my body, as it were.
Right.
Or,
did it feel like it was under attack from your perspective? But by the industry over there, was that how you sort of?
It did, but they met. I didn't talk about my feelings in depth with my agent, or, although when I was a young woman, I was very, very strong. For some reason, they got a no nude clause put in. I said, I'm not going naked in Mona Lisa. It's like, I'm definitely not. So they put a no nude clause in. This is like crazy. This was my first film, but I just think if you don't ask, you don't get. I mean, whatever status you're in, you can always ask whether you've just, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know where I got that from.
Right.
Maybe it was my mother, that, well, I can at least ask. And if they don't give me it, then fine. But I'm not going to wait until I get more successful for me to ask for things, because I can ask now. It doesn't cost anything to ask.
And would that be your advice to, say, a young woman or man, of course, entering the industry now in a similar situation?
Because as I've just explained, it doesn't cost. It may cost some, but it doesn't cost anything to ask. I mean, I say that, and maybe people are frightened. It may cost them a job because they might be seen to be, uppity, or not uppity, that's the wrong phrase, or a problem. But I guess it's the way you ask, isn't it?
Yeah. So being true to yourself at all times.
Trying to be. It's very difficult, isn't it? I mean, because I don't know how we can do that. I think we get tempted to do things. I'm not perfect. I'll try to be true to myself.
It sounds like a running clock, for want of a better phrase. I mean, you mentioned it earlier with the amends with the neighbour, that that you've got to be true to yourself in some way, however you define that. I guess is personal to you, but it seems like it's a running theme with you that you've got to stay true to whatever Cathy's values are. They seem to be, you mentioned a higher power earlier, they seem to be connected to something almost bigger than yourself that you feel sort of driven by.
I think we can fool ourselves. Yeah. So I can fool myself. It's like there's always room for improvement, as well as, don't be too hard on myself, but don't be too soft either. There's always a chance to learn.
Yeah.
So, and I'm still learning, because I think it's very tempting in life to fool ourselves into something and to be in denial.
Yeah.
It's just,
I think when you turn around to the Buddha and you say, I've learned everything, you get slapped around the chops and say, now you know nothing, and you've got to start from the beginning.
Yeah. But I think one thing I've learned is, as I'm getting older, that I just wish this was pushed a bit more to younger people about the joys of experience. How, wow, it's a bit like being in a fairground sometimes, because you've been on that, you've had that experience. You accept yourself a bit more. You don't have to be perfect. You're not as worried about what people think. I still think, sadly, there's elements of that, but you're not as worried about what people think. You know,
how are you now with that in particular? About what other people think. I must admit, when I was younger, I was crippled by it, and I've got a lot better at it. I mean, I've had some people much wiser than me sort of say things like, you know, what other people think of you is none of your business.
That's what I love that saying.
And phrases like that, and I think I'm getting closer to that at 44 years.
Lovely.
But definitely work to do. Where do you currently sit with that?
Well, because I've started a new chapter of my career with Brown Girl Films, I'm a baby. So I've had to say to experts or people with more experience than me, what does that mean? And sometimes I've been laughed at, not by close people, but and I've heard them laugh because I think they see my age and think I'm going to know more because of my age. And I don't. And it's like carry on regardless, because I've just done my second short. At least I'm there on set doing my second short. The important thing is that even if people laugh at or don't like what I've done, I've got content.
Yeah,
a bit like what you're doing, which is great. What you're doing, you've set this up. It's brilliant. You're doing it. So even how am I with that? Sadly, I still think it matters a bit. But not as much as it used to. Of course, you know, I don't want to, you know, be insulting to people and go, nothing matters to me. You know, but I have more freedom now. And even like when I did get a bit laughed at, because I asked a question on set about something and they just laughed because I think they thought, what? You know.
The consequence, right?
The consequence, yeah.
I've been seeing the lovely photos on Facebook
thank
of
you.
what you've been up to. It looks really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I was aware of getting laughed at, but I think what's great is that I'm there. I produced that one. I'm on set and there's a crew around me that has happened because of me. So if somebody wants to laugh at a question that I ask, that's fine, because the evidence of what I've done is there. So
this is quite a new enterprise. Good films. I think in my mind I thought maybe it had been going a few years. So this is
since the second short.
Sure.
Yeah,
that's
and
incredible.
we are.
What an amazing new journey for you to be going on.
Yeah, I know, and I'm a baby at it. So as long as I remind myself, that gives me the courage, confidence to go. You know what? I don't know this. What do you think? How do we do this? This morning I generated a QR code.
Hey, come on.
So,
I still haven't to do that either.
Oh, it's dead easy.
I bet it is.
So I say it's dead easy. If I tried to show you, I might not be able to. But I sometimes can think, oh God, those things are too hard. But I'm sorry to kind of like, this is called the School of Rock Bottoms. And for anybody who's like having a difficult time out there, it is, you know, I just thought I'd bring it back to that as well, because sometimes these difficult times, and you know what, Ollie, I might have them in the future as well. But the good thing is to know that they may not last, and it just really is okay to have a bit of a low morning. I've showed up today. I think in the past I wouldn't have, because of my feelings, and I have a tendency that, or I did when I was younger, I had to be perfect to show up. Right. So if it was a social engagement, only if I felt good, I would go. But now I've gone, even if I felt a bit low. We don't actually have to be 100% perfect to show up for things. Most of the time, we just show up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so many people out there in this world that are having a bad day today, but they've shown up.
Well, I once did a performance in the West End. This is when I just left drama school. And I actually had a panic attack halfway through the show. And I came off stage and the director came up to me and went, "What's the best you ever did it?" So there you go. No, I'm not quite sure what that meant. I wasn't quite sure how to take it. But I think I just went straight into kind of like, you know, just went into kind of autopilot mode and just played the scene.
But when you get a comment like that as well, the kind of attitude and mind I've got is I've got to suffer to be good. And when I came into the business, there was a saying, and it is, I don't know who this is from, suffer for your art is a famous saying.
It is, yeah.
And that was my belief system. If I wasn't suffering, right? When I was younger, there was a sad side to it, but there was a kind of, okay, well, this is what I've got to do to be an artist.
Right.
I'm okay with that. I will suffer. So for me, there's been a big sea change because when I got happier 20 years ago, oh gosh, what do I do about my creativity? I'm happier now. Am I still going to be able to cry? Am I still going to be able to get angry? Because I'm happier. So that provided a new sort of fear for me about, oh, I'm happier now when I've derived a lot of my artistic toolkit from sadnesses, being from a broken home, being a single parent,
Without getting too sort of much into kind of actory talk, do you sort of use an emotional memory? Are you sort of more of a method actor, or would you just use your imagination in the... Yeah, I did come across an interview where you said that.
I use a bit of both, imagination as well as method. I'm sorry if I was getting actory then, but I was just thinking about suffering for your art, how that was something that I clung on to, this idea.
You said something interesting just then. You said, when I got happy 20 years ago. How does Cathy remain happy? What is your sort of mental health question. Kind of like must-dos each day?
Well,
do you have any
pray. Yeah. I also need to get to bed at a decent hour. Being around people helps.
Yeah.
Going to the theatre, exercising, going for walks. I love the sea, and I haven't seen the sea enough. Reading as well. But people have got a lot to do with this. I do like company. We're all social animals, aren't we, as human beings?
Am I right in thinking, you alluded to it earlier, that if you're sort of too long on your own, you start to, you didn't use the word catastrophize, you used another word. Is that something that still happens to you, that you can sort of overthink and blow things up?
I can, but
yeah,
I was an only child and suffered a lot of loneliness when I was younger. But even today, before I came here, sometimes I can feel I've got to be around a lot of people to feel alive. Or just the people around me. When I go and study, I'll study in the library. But I went back home today and created the QR code at home. And I think that nourishment of solitude is very important. And it is okay to sit in the flat without, I don't put a lot of music on all the time, to sit in the flat. And I felt a bit of an accomplishment. And solitude and silence is very healing.
So it's about finding that balance.
Mm-hmm. And my partner he's a lovely joker. He's brought a lot of joy into my life. My grandson does. But if I'm not getting those things, like if I haven't exercised or if I haven't, gotten to bed at a decent time, it's about staying in the moment and going, okay, I haven't had this, and this, and this that generally makes me feel good. But, excuse me, what have I had? I've got this beautiful home. I've got peace. I've got my garden as a small garden, and just to think about, what I have got, rather than, it's always better to think about what I have got rather than what I haven't got. To get things into perspective and to try and not get frustrated about technology or something that I don't know. And it's like, just to try and, peace is very important to me, to get moments of peace as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially if I'm feeling a bit tired, under energized, and
it sounds to me that you don't let those things slide. If you were to let those things slide, which I can't imagine you would do, because that would mean
I have done.
Right. Okay.
I have done. Yeah. I have done. And
why? Why did you
probably being too busy?
Right.
Feeling. I mean, I've got I'm taking some time out in October, and I think when there is a space, sometimes I can fill it with so much stuff, so I'm not on my own. But I was in Budapest the other day and I wasn't well, and I had to stay in the hotel room and order some food to the hotel. And at first it was like, oh God, I'm not going to be able to get out here. And then I just resigned myself to it. And I thought, actually, I am enough as I am here now. I don't want any, and it was lovely I just wanted to demonstrate, because I can think that life is all about out there. I've got to do this, I've got to do that all the time, do this, fill it up with everything. And actually sometimes, because you're ill, you have to stay in one place and be with yourself. And it was lovely to enjoy it.
Wow. Yeah. And it sounds like you've got that down to a bit of fine art, that balance of when to sort of be around people and community and when to have that time out. And that comes with experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's like at the athlete, isn't it? It's monitoring.
Yeah.
It's like, have I had that today? Like my next day off will probably be, next Monday. We've got a busy time with the film doing its premiere in London. It's about, okay, well, keep that day, that Monday, to yourself.
Yeah.
And don't, it's okay to do nothing, to sit around and do nothing.
Yeah.
And twiddle your thumbs and watch even a bit of television or look out the window. Sorry, am I making sense here?
Absolutely.
I'm talking to myself in a way to remind myself that it's actually
I'm just getting
okay.
really scared because we're getting low on time. There's so much I want to talk to you about. Could I just pull out another quote here? Because I think it is really important that we talk about this. You said a few years ago, again, talking about Hollywood, for a black artist, it's a great place to be right now. And really, I should go. Back then, diversity was at its mere infancy, and there weren't many black and Asian faces in Hollywood. I just wondered that kind of journey that the industry has been on with diversity and inclusion. It seems, it's only just recently really that things have started to move. It's a space that I want to learn more about. I've got black friends in the industry. My wife's a South African Indian who moved over here 20 years ago, and she's something she's passionate about. I just wondered, in terms of your mental health journey, has it correlated in any way? I mean, you've been in the industry a little while. You're going to know, obviously, going back at 18 when you got your first professional job, how much it's changed. But what was that like when you were an 18-year-old compared to now? And is there any sort of dots that you can join with your mental health journey along the way? I know it's a very broad question I've just given you there. Well,
it was many things. I think this thing about, there aren't many good black actors was, and the divide and rule was happening, which is what happened in slavery times, to black people. So that there aren't many good black actors. So there was it had an effect on, well, I'll prove to you there are. But also, because I've got an ego, it was like, oh, okay, then I'm the best. So there was a mixture of wanting to do the honourable thing and prove that there were, but also enjoying that what was given to me, that position of you're very good. There aren't many good black actors. So there was it had a duality, and that kind of separated me, as well as it kind of separated me from other black creatives to some extent, because that's what was being told me. Also, I felt I constantly, and I probably have to do this now as well, but not as much, because people are much more aware of microaggressions. Like things would be said like, because I'd hardly done any black theatre companies, and a casting director who I do like said to me, yes, it's best not to ghettoise yourself, isn't it? And I said, well, in that case, 90% of white actors are ghettoising themselves because they're all in white casts. So I would have something to say back, because, the imbalance of how one was looked at as a black actor rather than as you were looked at as a white actor was so apparent. So it felt a little bit, I suppose I was full of resentment in a way because of what was said. So things were said and it was like I'd answer back like that, but still be frustrated about, well, why was that even said? Well, you're constantly in a state of educating people and they're still not being educated. And it was frustrating. And so I kind of like went into battle, I suppose. I say went into battle. You were always ready.
Right.
With, because you knew how you'd be perceived. People, always had assumptions. Some people always had assumptions about me. It wasn't just colour, it was class. I came from Liverpool. So that meant, I was working class and came from an estate, and my mum and dad did blue collar jobs. Well, they didn't. So the assumptions were all there.
And did that sort of bleed into the sort of things you were getting put up for or people were trying to cast you?
Yes, and I said no to certain things, but I had a good agent and she respected what I said. She said most people say yes.
Right.
So I turned things down. Some things I think I shouldn't have as well, looking back, because I thought, well, I was such an inverted snob as well, an intellectual snob, I should say, that I wouldn't dream of doing a soap. It was like, no, I'm an actor. I want to do a different part. I don't want to do the same part for the next 20 years of my life. So, but I carried a bit of, I'm too good for that. But when I went to work on a soap, when I did my own night and day, I realised how hard soap actors work. Sure. Oh my gosh. And then I got a chance to do 6 episodes of Emmerdale. I really enjoyed it as well. That was in my happy years. I did Emmerdale and I thought, great. And I've also recently done Death in Paradise. And it was like, I remember when I said...
So jealous of that job.
You'll get it. You'll get one.
Recently.
I'm sorry. I don't
my
mean to
agent,
make you
if
jealous.
You're listening to this, can you please get me an audition for Death in Paradise?
The reason why I bring it up is that, and you're talking about mental health, I think some of the decisions that I made as well were about, if I do that, people are going to think like this about me. So I won't. So it was more about how I would be perceived in the industry rather than what do you actually want to do? Right. So the Death in Paradise decision to do it was great because it came in as an offer. And at first it was, my God, no, I don't want to do this. And then I thought, well, why don't I? And I thought, because it's not Succession. No. And am I saying no to this because of worrying about what other people will think? And I thought, yeah, I'm saying no for that reason. This is why I need to say yes. And it was fab. It was, and so I can go from Jojo and Gran Gran to Help, to Death in Paradise, to whatever. I'm an actor. Hopefully I can span. It doesn't take away any of my sort of skill. If I do a cartoon, if I do a game, if I do an advert, I've done voiceovers for adverts. But when I came out, I was very, very, no, you don't do adverts because you're not an actor if you do that. So I'm not as rigid now.
I can actually even remember that. I came out of drama school in 2001, and that does sound massively antiquated now, isn't it? Most actors do anything for
it. Of course. But back then...
I know, I remember.
Another thing is...
Yeah.
We didn't talk about our lives.
Nope.
Mystery was it. We didn't talk about our lives, even though I was talking in newspapers about racial elements and coming from Liverpool and,
Well, you've got a Prince mug there. He was one of my idols growing up. He still is. I mean, he was a complete enigma, wasn't he? He never shared anything about his life. And that was part of the mystique.
Right. And it's so, I kept myself private. And, that I still am private now, but I think back then I wouldn't have done certain programs that I'm doing now because worrying about what other people think. And it's like, well, no, it's fine. I will do that. What's the point of making a decision based on being fearful of what other people think? Yeah. It matters. Do you want to do this? And that is the freedom of experience and getting older and questioning myself and going, well, what do you want? What do you want?
Yeah.
Mental health, I think it's in a much better state than it was when I was younger, but I was still, my younger self still commend some of the decisions I made, you know, but I just think I just wasn't as in touch with myself back then as I am now, you know.
And is that the sort of overriding message maybe for someone who's listening to this any age, but I'm sort of imagining a sort of maybe a sort of younger creative who's just on this journey, or maybe not, maybe someone who's just gone through something traumatic like you described with a divorce, or, you know, and is going through anxiety and depression. Would you say that's the main thing, is to get that honesty and reach out to people?
Yeah, self-honesty as well. I think actually I have only discovered recently that I'm actually a worrier. And it's not very sexy to say that about yourself, is it?
No. How do you stop that? How do you stop worrying?
Catching it, being aware of it.
Right.
And I thought, oh yeah, you are. I laugh because I've just bought a car and I spent 3.5 hours in the car sales room, but I was thorough.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard to know when you're being thorough or whether those questions are out of anxiety. How do you stop that? I think by looking at your thoughts and going, like even today, I was a bit worried about this interview. I was aware of it. You know what? Maybe it's not even about stopping it, but it's about being aware of it. Maybe it will never stop, but it's that thing of, oh, I've got a bit of anxiety, you know, because I'm going to see a friend and I've got to tell her some disappointing news. And I, you know, if you're looking at yourself daily, you can go, oh yeah, I'm a bit nervous about that. And then the thoughts like, yeah, because, you know, you feel guilty because you're going to disappoint her. And it really is all this noise that is unnecessary. It's like, I just have to tell her this. I'm sorry that this has happened, but this is why. But I think it's not about stopping. It may be not about stopping the worrying, but it's about recognizing, oh, there's free-floating anxiety here going on here.
It sort of takes it away. I mean, I think the psychology behind what you've just said is really interesting, that you woke up, you know, this is obviously very relevant to this conversation and today, but it's quite interesting that you shared that at the beginning of the podcast, that you felt a bit anxious about today. And actually, as soon as you sort of said it, it took the power out of it. I think the psychology of you actually sharing it just proves that that's something that you do regularly.
But on another note is that the hard time I give myself about that I have to be okay all the time. You know, I saw somebody just out of the blue, which was great, but I felt that I haven't seen her for a while, and it was like, where do you start? Because so much has gone on. I haven't seen her for 2 years, and it's like, I don't know, I find sometimes that difficult. But it was nice as well. I don't know whether you understand that. You know,
I do.
When you haven't seen someone for 2 years, where do you start with the conversation? There's a lot to catch up. It's just suddenly impromptu, but it's a silly thing to be anxious over. But I can be anxious over that.
And sharing it and acknowledging it sort of takes the power out of it.
Yeah, but it sounds crazy, doesn't it? What is all that about? It's not a third.
Is that one of the hard-learned lessons of your rock bottom? Because during that period, you were saying that you weren't acknowledging it really and running. Has that been one of the main lessons from your rock bottom, would you say? You know, to acknowledge what you're feeling, no matter how painful or what, it doesn't matter what other people think, but find a way to share it with somebody.
Yeah, it is. And also the gratitude of being listened to, because I think it's not sexy to say that you actually are a bit of a worrier. And it's also not sexy to say, actually, I'm feeling fatigued today, because I think in this society that we live in, especially in London, everything is about go-getting.
Yeah.
So when you say you're feeling fatigued, it's like, oh, oh, really? Well, what are you going to do about that? Or it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think some problems are more easy to talk about than others.
I'm really gutted because I think the studios are going to kick us out in a minute if I don't wrap up.
Sorry.
And I'm having a lovely chin wag. Cathy, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you,
It's been
Ollie.
amazing. We've had a lovely chat. I really hope the listeners and viewers have enjoyed it as much as I have. I'm sure they have.
Thank you. And I think it's really important to try and be your own best friend. Really, really self-care, self-parent, because you know yourself and go, oh, I felt this then, and oh, I was aware of that, and it's only one day at a time. So it's nice to look after that one day and go, oh yeah, well, I didn't really need to feel like that. Why was that? And that's about pressure that I put on myself to be perfect.
Yeah.
And
well, here.
And it's not on.
Well, Cathy, you're a Goliath of the performing arts industry, and you've given us some real, Goliath things to think about today. And I really appreciate you just kind of spilling your guts and getting raw and honest with us to help other people.
Thank you
really
for the opportunity, because a lot of people who are in the business possibly talk about the career, but not about themselves as people.
Sure.
The human side that everybody can identify with.
Definitely. And I think it's going to really inspire and help a lot of people.
I hope so.
That it's something that you've experienced as well.
Thank you.
So a huge thanks.
Oh, thanks, Ollie.
And guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. I'm going to be adding some show notes with some links, if it's all right, to your film company,
yes.
and maybe some other things. I'll have a chat with Cathy, but anything she wants to share will all be there in the show notes. So please go and check out the show notes right now. Please like, subscribe, auto-download, review, rate. We're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, we're everywhere. Please share it with friends and family who you think will get something from this podcast. And as always, I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Cathy, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you so much.
It's really hard for me to wrap this up. I'm getting anxiety just closing this because that means I've got to say goodbye. But I will say goodbye, and I'll see you soon.